Good to have you back. It is still Good Morning Anambra, Tuesday episode. Now we have to start running with the topics that we have lined up for your viewing pleasure this morning. The first one is presidential candidates and peace agreements. Presidential candidates and peace agreements, and we have gentlemen that have joined us to look at this. They are Professor Ifeanyi Ezeaku. Professor Ifeanyi Ezeaku is a lecturer at Paul University. Oka, Prof, welcome to our studios.
Thank you, Anambra.
And we have Sir Chris Chikwelu, a political scientist. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, listeners. Good morning.
Okay, and I'm still here with Dave Okpokwasile. Okay, let's roll. Looking at presidential candidates and peace agreements, you know that the presidential candidates of all the political parties in Nigeria had in 2015 signed a peace accord to prevent electoral violence. And just recently, a second peace accord was signed by all the presidential candidates in Nigeria ahead of 2019 general election. Reason again, to prevent electoral violence and accept election outcomes. Well, that's why we have gathered this morning to look at this peace accord, peace pact, or whatever you may decide to call it. Now, my question is, when did the election become a war deal that needed a peace accord or peace pact all the time? Professor Ezeaku.
Well, what we mean by peace is where there is no violence, no boxing, no stabbing, no shooting. That's peace. But this one they're talking about peace, all these presidential candidates talking about peace, it means that all of them from A to Z are violent. Because if...
Or have tendency.
If they are violent, because you cannot have the tendency of begin to ask for peace. It is when that thing is inside the individual to manifest. Then when we see this person can outwit me, another person outwit me, then let us come together and resolve how we shall go. But it doesn't end there. That issue of peace, is it internalized to come out during the election? Once that target peace is inside everybody, all these presidential candidates, they will now talk to their supporters not to be violent. It's not only boxing and killing and so on that we entail peace. Rigging is an aspect of violence.
Before we get to that, Mr. Chikwelu, please, is the election a war deal? Otherwise, why the peace pact?
Actually, election is not a war deal, but when you check the history of what brought about the peace pact, let's go back to the memory lane. In 2011 elections, after the 2011 general elections, there was problem, there was pandemonium, more especially in the northern part of the country. A lot of people were killed, coppers, people who went on election duties and other things. So it was after the resultant effect of that in 2015 election, the leaders of the country and the former president of the country, His Excellency Goodluck Jonathan, decided to appoint and constitute a peace committee headed by former head of state, Alhaji Abdulsalami Abubakar. And that peace committee has been working till date. And I think that peace committee achieved a lot, because immediately after the 2015 election, everywhere was Nigerians went and slept, and they believed that election had come and gone, and they should now face governance. And that's where we are today.
That's why the great expectation that there could be violence. Okay, Dave?
Do you think, you mentioned the role the peace committee played and the signing of the peace accord. Do you think that their role played a major, they played a major role in ensuring that people went back to their houses after the election in 2015? Don't you think that the acceptance of the then president not to contest the results was actually the reason why the violence didn't erupt and not the signing of the peace agreement?
Well, actually, this is a chain let me say, chain reaction. For instance, there are some cases where somebody might have a problem with maybe a civil matter, and you are taken to police, for instance, to sign an undertaking. The moment you sign an undertaking, that undertaking will guide you and guide your supporters. You'll be telling them that this time around, after the election, let everybody, this is not an issue of maybe calling names, this and that. After the election, let everybody go and sleep. Whoever emerges after the election, that they should take it the way it comes out. Then, on the other part, you know, actually, just like I said, what happened in 2011, it gave the people the need that Nigerians will pressure on these leaders to now sign that thing, so that it will be a guide to them. Because if that thing had not been signed, maybe after the 2015 election, even if the President Jonathan accepted the defeat, there are some other who may be by the side agitating that this thing didn't go how it was supposed to go, that the election was rigged. But immediately they looked at the 2 points, the peace agreement, and the way President Jonathan accepted defeat. And putting two of them pari passu, they said, okay, let the will of God and will of Almighty
Still on this line of thought, do you think that if the President Jonathan had won that election, that this peace agreement could have been upheld?
Well, you cannot give an unborn child again. But the Nigerians,
okay, let's come to you, Prof. Do you think the peace accord would have, been upheld?
Yes, there are very many humble people in the contest. For instance, His Excellency Jonathan, he had the impact of the peace agreement in him. And that's why he yielded to the result pronounced. But you discover there at the screen, some people were shouting, making noise, disturbing the release of the result. Because what they anticipated, as my colleague had mentioned, what they anticipated wasn't the result. And as such, Jonathan, being the pivot of that peace, he is the person who initiated it, and he cannot violate it. He acted it. Then some people say, well, as Oga has yielded, we shall yield. But if you go deep into their hearts, it's burning. So the issue of getting a peace committee and advising, my idea is that sometimes the person who is a humble person, a reliable individual, can hold to the peace pact. But there are many people who are very violent in character, in life.
I was actually going to ask you that some of their supporters or members of the party were not part of this peace agreement. So will this peace pact stop them from going violence or not accepting the result of the election?
Because it's their Oga that has held the peace pact in himself. But we are now talking of a peace pact, searching for the peace this period. It is now when it is signed, the presidential candidates sign, they must go back to their supporters and start preaching the gospel of that peace. If it is not preached well, it can be disturbed.
Well, like what you said is also in line. Because normally, personally, I once contested an election in 2007. Although the story is for another day, but I know what happened. After the collation, I won the election. The result collected from the wards. I won the State House of Assembly. While we were waiting for the final returning officer to now add the results, we started hearing another result being announced. Already people were jubilating, drinking that I won an election. When we came down here to Oka, I heard that another result was announced. The then rec at Ayala or whatever told me, okay, I should go to tribunal. You understand me? I calmed down my people. You understand? It was because I believe in the peace.
Okay.
Calm down.
Because it was an area election. But when we look at the national election,
It
how
might
will
be-
you go around and count the whole nation?
It is an
We are
application.
coming. We are coming. We are coming. We're going to take a short break here to bring you voices from the streets. We're coming back.
Na Nigeria ka anyị na-ekwu anyị chọrọ ka anyị nwee peace ọhịa Igbo niile chọrọ ma ndị Hausa ma Yoruba ihe anyị na-achọ ka udo wee dụ ka Chineke jiri aka ya gbukwe na ọgụ a na-anụ because ọgụ a na-anụ awụrụ onye mmadụ ga-emenwu onye Chineke ya abịa jiri aka mere onwe ya aha mee ihe ga-atụ ụwa n'anya.
Based on the bill passed, the nation, like the country, is in a chaotic state now that there are lots of crises, and I don't know how that would be achieved over the years before we got to this mess.
And I pray to God Almighty to make it a successful one, because everything depends on God. With God, all things are possible.
There can only be a peaceful coexistence if only government can be able to settle those people that have problems. Make sure that their problems, what they are fighting for, that government looks into their problem.
Glad to have you back. Prayer. Okay, Dave, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, I want to come from this angle. We've been able to look at the situation in 2015 or before 2015 and the resultant effect. Now, coming to the players at this point, looking at the way the primaries went in the different political parties, do you think this peace agreement will be upheld at this point? Sachiko?
Well, since the advent of this dispensation, I think 2019, that is 2018-2019 election, witnessed the best of the presidential primaries we've ever had. And I think the primaries...
In all the political parties?
Yeah, most of the political parties. The presidential primaries all went well. My great party had their presidential primaries very well, in as much as there are some other skirmishes in the other party, but they were all done within the prescribed the prescribed electoral guidelines. But the area we are pointing at is that presently now we're having problem. The Electoral Act Amendment Bill, the time is running. And if you look at other presidential candidates of other parties, they had meeting with the Peace Committee last week, either on Thursday or Friday. And yesterday, they approached court. And why they approached court was because the president refused to give assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill because time is running for it. Normally...
And why do you think he refused? Excuse me. Let's see if anybody has joined us. Hello? Yeah, hello?
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Anambra. Okay, that's for gonna be said. Why?
My name is calling from Oka.
Emeka from Oka. Go on.
Yes. I want to comment on this presidential peace committee agreement.
Yeah.
All these agreements they are talking about, let us tell ourselves the truth. If Buhari signing that, okay, the Buhari then, or so far, I don't know Buhari now, but all I know is that there's no room to fight by themselves, you know, that's not get to fight. So all this is, let us just, are we ready for this election? If you're ready for this election, something of how can Dakari be among the people we will know a relationship with the president and himself? Let us and look at what the army and the police are doing in the election. This cannot guarantee peace because people will fight for their rights. What happened at the Oshun and the Parliament election is good to you that the people are not ready for peace. Fighting the electorate with army, with the police, and other forces does not show that they are ready for peace. Let us also say the truth and let things be done frankly.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emeka. Thank you. Okay. Yes. And the 2015 election, Professor Zako, was characterized by ethnic and religious sentiment that generated fears, of the outcome. But then 2019, the main presidential candidates are all coming from the north. So do you see the same temperature that we witnessed in 2015, happening this 2019? And why would there be peace agreements?
Yeah. I believe that the problem we have in Nigeria is this ethnicity and the religion. Not that ethnicity is not good and religion is not good, but when people overblow selfish interest, that is exclusivism, you exclude other states or ethnic groups or religions. Now they are from the north. Almost all of them are from the north. But now, the real purpose of leadership is give the society what they want. Make sure you distribute the amenities of the nation to every corner, each area benefiting from what they really lack. A person who is in a riverine area has a particular problem, something to be solved on that area. The desert encroached area, erosion encroached area. If the government can now look at these particular areas and then do good to them, there'll be nothing one should be saying it can come from the north or from the south or east and so on. But the important thing is we lack morality, real morality in the political practice in Nigeria.
So you don't think the issue of religion will play a role in these elections if both of them, the two major political gladiators in this election are coming from the same religion? Do you think it will be peaceful, especially in the north where we've recorded most of the electoral crisis?
Yes. I remember during Abiola's contest, his running mate was also a Muslim. But people saw the two as real agents for peace and development in Nigeria.
Okay, let's take this call before we continue.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. This is
AGK from? Okay, go on.
From where?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we are talking about signing peace agreement in this modern age. And it is only in this part of the world in Nigeria that these people, political parties, come together to sign peace agreement. I don't think we have a good electoral law. It will take care of all these problems. So I don't know why the president has refused to sign that electoral law. Because if you have a good electoral law, it will take care of all these things that people go to sign this agreement of. I don't know what kind of country we are in Nigeria. It's unfortunate.
Okay.
The political parties should try to terrorize the national assembly to sign that electoral law. It will take care of all this nonsense. Good morning.
Good morning,
Thank
my
you.
dear. Welcome.
Would laws actually solve the issue of peace, ensuring peaceful elections? Would laws address that?
Okay, but before now, I had wanted Ichele to talk on this Muslim ticket. Okay, though from different political parties, because that was why we had that fear in 2018 because of ethnic and religious sentiment. But this one, both of them are from not an extraction.
Extraction.
Why are we expecting violence again?
Well, actually, violence does not have a parameter to measure it. It does not give sign. It does not give time. It does not give notice. But most often, you might see the build-up, maybe either from certain things that are happening. It is coincidental. It wasn't something that was planned earlier. Actually, this person was an incumbent serving president. Coincidental is from the north. Then the presidential candidate of People's Democratic Party is also from the north. It was coincidental. And this time around, the reason why most often people agitate for zoning or whatsoever, it wasn't that zoning is not constitutional, but why most people agitating for political convenience is just because to give more room for political cohabitation among the people or among the interest groups. Now, just like you mentioned in 2015, the fight was between Christian South and Northern Muslim. And some people just that time saw it, we are fighting these people. But this time, they're from the same place. They're all even Fulanis. Because, you know, when you come to the North, there are times they still have these micro divisions and micro ethnic divisions amongst them. So they're even the same Fulani stock of the North, the same Muslim and Islamic distance. In as much as they came from different zones, but at least they're from the same place. So this time around, I believe that the election that we're expecting, which the ongoing campaign now is issue-based, will be very free and fair. This time around, people are becoming politically aware. It wasn't like before, where people use any sort of things to do campaign. People are now campaigning based on issues for development and governance.
I think you can guarantee that. Okay, let's
in line with what you said, what then do you foresee being an indices that might bring up violence in this election? Look, you've done an analysis that both of them are Muslim or Fulani stock. What then could trigger a violence
that led to the signing of the peace pact?
Yes.
Firstly, when someone starts stepping outside the normal established procedure for election, for instance, now the serving president is CNC, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Eventually, if during the election day and he directs the security operatives also to go beyond the area that's or partake in the area that's not supposed to be. Let me give you an example. If you check about 2 weeks ago, when he presented his what do they call it? He called it next level. You understand me? When he presented it, a lot of tongues were being twagging. Why? That the military apparatus, the security operations were there when he presented it. Whereas that this presentation was something that is meant for political civil institution.
Okay, let's move ahead. In this peace pact, Professor Zako, what is the role of INEC? Because if they have signed this peace pact among the presidential candidates, and then INEC decides to go the other way, are we going to have peace?
Yes, we shall have peace. If it's signed as it is, and INEC says we cannot operate on that, then there may be some crisis. But if INEC knows that he is a servant to the society, then he will dance to the tune of popular conscience. That is, doing the work. This is a serious issue that INEC must never start thinking, are we favoring the incumbent president or the other person, but doing the right thing at the right time. Let it not be might is right. Not might is right when the incumbent president has arranged all the service chiefs when he was flying, a political party issue. Why should these people be there? So it can even lead to the issue of violence if, and only if, these forces are brought in during the election. Leave the people to go on their own.
Okay. You should let them know that these are institutions that should be on their own. We are running out of place. Ichele, what do you have to tell us as who are set to leave?
Well,
advise Nigerians.
What I want to tell Nigerians, peace-loving Nigerians, is to continue to be peace-loving, continue to go about their various businesses without fear or favor, and believe that this present political dispensation, which in the next 2 months, elections will start up in this country, that we are going to have a very peaceful election. And people should now take note that this virus of vote buying that has now come into our political firmament, that people should resist it and vote for candidates of their choice, more especially the candidates who we are looking at that it will make Nigeria to work again.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I collect money from you now.
Yeah, I believe that this living together peacefully, but don't buy votes. The voter seek the approval of your conscience.
Okay.
Not conscience of money, but conscience of the future of this country.
Yes, very important. The future that we're going to bequeath to the unborn generation. that is just what we should have in mind as to get set for this 2019 election. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us in this all-important discussion. Professor Ifeanyi Ezeaku, lecturer, Paul University, Oka.
Yes, our people, peaceful election.
Okay, thank you, sir. And then Sir Chris Chikwelo, political scientist. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, listeners. Vote, don't fight.
Vote, don't fight, so that our peace accord will stand. Dave?
It's been an exciting discussion having Professor Ezeaku and Sir Chikwelo joining us this morning. I believe that the things we emphasized this morning will be able to set the pace for a greater and a better Nigeria.
Very importantly. Thank you very much. And do stand by for the next segment coming up very soon.